Fettuccine Alfredo.
We'll begin by making our fresh pasta, and the first step is to measure out all of your ingredients. For this dough recipe, I'm using 2 whole eggs, and then we'll want to separate out 4 additional yolks. I like to be very careful when separating out my yolks for making pasta, because one of the most beautiful things in all of cooking is when you pour the yolks into that flour to make your fresh pasta. For this recipe, you should have at least 171 grams of eggs. We happen to have exactly 171 grams here, so our eggs are good. If that number was under 171, you would just add a touch of water until you get over that amount. Now to make my pasta, I'll start by dumping out my flour in the center of a cutting board. Then, using the base of that same bowl that I dumped it out from, I will make what's called a well in the middle of my flour. At this point, I'll dump my eggs into the center of that well. I'll grab a fork, puncture through all the egg yolks, and then begin to whisk. Whisk very carefully and do not break the sides of your well. As a first step here, we're just whisking up the eggs enough that the eggs themselves are combined. Pretend the flour is a bowl and that you're whisking up your eggs to make an omelet. Don't break the bowl or your eggs are gonna fly everywhere. Once our eggs are properly mixed, we'll begin to pull in the edges of the flour, gradually incorporating that flour into our egg. Again, make sure you're doing this bit by bit so that your well doesn't break and the eggs don't spill everywhere. The egg should become thicker and thicker and thicker as you pull in that flour, and eventually you can take the leap and pull everything in all together. Now is when I like to grab a bench scraper and start pulling all of that flour in. You should do pretty much whatever method you want to mix everything together. It should start to look more and more like a dough. I call this either the well method or sometimes the Italian grandma method, because this is how my grandparents would have made pasta. And there's something about doing it the way they would traditionally have done it in Italy that's a lot more fun. Many people might disagree, but I feel like you can even taste it in the pasta. Once it looks like a pile of powdery scrambled eggs, time to use your hands. Get in there and accept the fact that your hands are going to get dirty and just start pressing it all together. There's a very easy way to learn how to knead fresh pasta. Watch this in slow motion. If you watch carefully, I'm using my left hand to fold the dough over itself each time, and then I'm using the weight of my body and the palm of my hand to press the dough down and into itself. Once you get in a nice rhythm, do this for about 5 to 10 minutes or until the dough is smooth and elastic. Your arms are going to get tired, but think of it as burning off all the calories that you're about to eat. What this does is develop all the gluten, and it gives the pasta a nice chewy texture that you're looking for. There are some days where I knead for about a minute or a minute and a half, and then I just decide that I'm done. And there are other days, like today, where I do it properly, and the dough begins to look smooth and perfect like this. If you press a finger in and it springs back up like this, you know you've worked your dough properly. If this guy's happy, then I'm happy. Once our dough is finished, we'll wrap it up in plastic wrap, where it needs to take a quick nap for at least an hour or up to 3 hours at room temperature. Let's leave it right there. Before we roll out our pasta, it's always good to start a pot of boiling water over the stove. And after our pasta dough has been resting for an hour, it should be ready to roll. Rolling pasta is really fun. As a first step, most people will cut their ball of pasta dough in half. I want to roll out a really nice long sheet, so I'm only going to cut off a tiny bit of it. From there, hit it with a touch of flour and press it out into a nice thin strip. You can use a rolling pin, you can use your hands. Sometimes I also just grab something random like a bottle of olive oil or a wine bottle, but what you're looking for is a nice thin edge just like this that you can start to feed into your pasta maker. Before rolling anything out, hit that pasta attachment with plenty of flour, then hit both sides of that pasta dough with even more flour, and now on the lowest setting, start to put that pasta through. Let it do its thing. Too many people pull it and touch it and grab it, just let it roll. Perfect. So what we'll do is between each roll, we're just gonna fill that in with flour and lightly rub that into all those cracks. Flip it over, do the same thing. Don't worry about making a mess, we're making pasta. There's always gonna be a dial on your pasta maker. One is gonna be the widest, and then if you turn it all the way, that's the thinnest. Once more, on the first setting, let it fold up into itself, and you'll notice that anytime I'm touching it, I'm always using the backs of my hands. Don't stick your fingers up into the dough like this, that will ruin your dough. We'll make the pasta attachment a little thinner, and then go again. Immediately lay the pasta down, let it do its thing. Sometimes you can help guide it, but don't really touch it. Just let it fold. And now is when I just get in a rhythm. Don't worry about making a mess. You have to accept that there's gonna be flour in your kitchen when you're making pasta. Look how perfectly it rolls itself up. Same thing again, tighten it up even more, lay it down for a second, it'll line itself up, and then I can guide it. Now it's gonna start getting longer. We don't really need to add too much more flour. I don't feel anything sticky. One more setting. Now we're making pasta. See how I'm just barely guiding it? I'm not holding it, I'm not really touching it too much. I'm just letting it all happen. Once I can start seeing my hand through the pasta in the light, that's usually usually a pretty good indicator to me that it's thin enough. And there it is. Look at that big, giant pasta sheet. Once you understand the feel of pasta and you're confident in the stretchiness of that dough, you can just play with it like this and it should hold
like
totally.
A scarf.
Once your pasta's rolled out, toss it onto your board because it's time for an important decision. What shape are we going to cut it into? Obviously, we're making fettuccine Alfredo, so we need fettuccine. This one is our fettuccine pasta attachment. But if you want, you could even cut this pasta by hand into nice thick noodles. Machine on and then go. Usually you'll need to feed the pasta in during this part of the process. But the other important thing you need to be doing is cutting the pasta. So once you feel like you have enough, grab the pasta and lay it out on your board and just trim it with your knife. This is one portion of fettuccine. Drag it through all that flour, twirl it around into a nice nest. Now we'll roll out some more pasta and then same thing. Carefully grab that pasta and trim. There it is. Before we make the sauce, I'll make sure my pasta water is ready to go with a lot of salt, and then we can prep all our ingredients for our sauce. For a simple and delicious Alfredo, we'll need 1 clove of garlic, which I will quickly mince up, and then into a pan I'll add a nice hunk of butter. By the way, the reason I'm making my sauce first is because our pasta is going to cook very fast. Fresh pasta butter. We'll need 1 clove of garlic, which I will quickly mince up, and then into a pan I'll add a nice hunk of butter. By the way, the reason I'm making my sauce first is because our pasta is going to cook very fast. Fresh pasta cooks in about 60 seconds. Once that butter's melted down, add in your minced garlic, and with your heat at about medium, mix this around until it's nice and aromatic. Add in your half and half, and stir to get it nice and warm, but do not bring it to a boil. We need it warm enough that it's gonna melt our Parmesan cheese. Once it starts bubbling at the edges like this, we should be ready to put in our cheese. Turn down your heat to low, then grab a big block of Parmesan cheese and start grating. I don't usually like to measure this part because I know the sauce is done once it gets close to that consistency that we all know and love in a fettuccine Alfredo. And I just keep going until it thickens up. Now again, I'll give it a good mix. What you're looking for is a sauce that's smooth and creamy, just like this. And when it looks like that, you're ready to throw in your pasta. Be ready, because this cooks fast. I'm gonna do 2 portions because I'm hungry. Give it a quick stir and then be ready to pull it out. For me, I wait until it starts floating and then give it about 15 to 20 more seconds. Then it's done. Pull that pasta. Immediately dump that pasta into your Alfredo, along with a tiny splash of that pasta water, and some fresh cracked pepper. And now all that's left to do is mix. Oh, the sounds. The steam, that's incredible. I'll give it 1 quick taste. So good. If I wasn't trying to be proper, there's a good chance I'd just eat this right out of the pan. The way I like to plate my pasta is I roll it up into a nice big roll like this. Kind of a fun, fancy way to do it if you're just looking to have some fun with it. And I just push it off ever so carefully onto my plate. 1 final dusting of cheese and just a light touch of fresh cracked pepper over the top. Fettuccine Alfredo is supposed to be simple. That's too pretty. I can't eat out of that.
So you said it's done? No, you're not.
Best pasta ever.
No fucking, real quick description. What kind of show you running, huh?